This video will try and explain in the most concise way possible why we believe Obama is so dangerous and must be defeated, and why he's been the worst president in American history. First of all, just think about the things that he's said. He said, if I don't fix the economy in 3 years, it'll be a one-term proposition. And now all he does is blame Bush. He didn't fix anything. He says he believes in redistribution. Well, that's a socialist idea. He said, I will radically transform America. What does he mean by radically transform? In what way? He once said he'll campaign in all 57 states. Well, there aren't 57 states. There are 57 Muslim countries. Maybe that's what he meant. He said, you didn't build it? Well, who built it then? Spread the wealth? What do you mean spread the wealth? People accumulate money and the government just wants to take it away? What do you mean spread the wealth? Referring to the Middle East burning in 20 nations, he said it's like a bump in the road. That guy is so messed up foreign policy, totally. And now we got this big, huge conspiracy, crazy, lying, cheating thing about Benghazi and Libya and the killing of an American ambassador. And they're just lying all the way through it. He said before he was elected, when I'm elected, Muslim violence will cease. Can you imagine the narcissism and craziness of a man who would say that? He said, I'll cut the debt in half. He hasn't touched the debt. The debt's just massively increased. In fact, he said about President Bush, $400 billion in annual debt. That's anti-American. Well, what's his $1.3 trillion annual debt? In 60 Minutes, he said he didn't know what the debt was. Come on. You don't know what the debt is and you're president of the United States? He said, we tried my plan and it worked. Oh, yeah? You tried your plan and it worked? How did it work? He said the private sector's doing just fine. What planet does he live on? And then remember when he was in front of a mic he thought was off and he said to the president of Russia, I'll be a lot more flexible cutting our nuclear arsenal next term. Yeah, what kind of thing is that to say to a president of Russia who was our enemy for so many years? Why did Clint Eastwood say he's the greatest hoax ever perpetuated on the American people? What does that mean exactly? And so now I just want to tell you about some of the facts about Obama, and you judge for yourself. The national debt has climbed from $10 trillion when he took over, which is way too high, to $16 trillion plus, and is on its road for him to amass more debt by himself than all the other 42 presidents behind him. Romney, on the other hand, took a budget deficit in Massachusetts and turned it into a surplus. He was working with an 87% Democratic majority. Obama promised 5% unemployment if he passed his $1 trillion wasteful spending stimulus, and it's been over 8% for 43 straight months, the worst record in American history since the Depression. He'll be the first president since the Depression to end up with fewer people working when he ends than when he begins. He keeps saying he created all these jobs, but the lie there is he's not counting the jobs lost. When you factor in that and do net, then you see he's lost more jobs than he's gained in net. First time ever. Gas prices have doubled since he took over, and that's because he doesn't allow a lot of drilling. He's shutting coal plants, increasing our dependence on foreign oil. Romney took the 47th worst state in job creation and turned it into full employment, again with an 87% Democratic legislature. And he made $250 million in private business while creating hundreds of thousands of jobs for others. And he took a failing International Olympics and turned it into a wild success. He is the most accomplished man ever to run for president. 400 economists recently said that Romney's plan is good and Obama's plan will just further weaken America. He's grown government so much that now 25% of the gross domestic product is government spending, the highest ever. We have all those classified security leaks coming right out of his administration, some out of the Oval Office. I mean, it's impossible. That New York Times story with all those direct quotes could not have come from him. And then he lies, his spokesman lies saying, they would never do such thing. And it endangers our allies and our own soldiers. So he brags about killing bin Laden. Then he fires up the terrorists by bragging so that when they sack the embassy in Libya and kill our ambassador, they chant, Obama were all Osamas. He's so incompetent. Hires Muslim Brotherhood terrorists to work in the government. He's aiding Muslim Brotherhood running Egypt by forgiving loans, giving them massive amounts of money, scaling down exercises with our ally Israel, and increasing our exercises with the Egyptian military. He has stalled and appeased and delayed Iran. First, he tried to talk them out of nukes for 18 months. How stupid is that? And then he pretends to be tough on sanctions, but actually has been trying to give waivers on them and avoiding tough sanctions. And all the while, Iran marches further and further closer to a nuclear bomb. He told Israel they couldn't build in Jerusalem. His administration refuses to say whether Jerusalem is the capital of Israel. Jerusalem was taken out of the Democratic platform, and when it was put back, it was booed loudly by the delegates. Why did the Obama administration forbid the FBI and CIA to use the word Islam or Muslim when they're trying to investigate terrorist incidents? He advocates cuts so severe in the military that it'll make our military the smallest since before World War II. And his own defense secretary said it'll jeopardize our ability to defend ourselves. He pulled the defensive rug out of Poland and Czechoslovakia by removing our missiles. Of course, getting the endorsement of Putin, of the former KGB head of Russia, but angering Poland so much that Lech Walesa on Romney's tour explicitly endorsed Romney, which you don't do in an election era. There's record levels of poor now as policies have devastated the poor, so that 1 out of every 6 Americans is below the poverty level thanks to him. He's got record number of people on food stamps. Can't you see that his policies are hurting the poor? And after Bill Clinton and the Congress at that time worked so hard to impose work requirements on welfare, he's gutted them. He keeps talking about helping the middle class, but the middle class has lost 40% of their wealth in Obama's presidency. The average household income of middle class under him has dropped from $55,000 to $51,000. And U.S. debt now is up to $136,000 per household. We've had a record number of home disclosures. He promised Obamacare would reduce premiums and it would cost only $900 billion, which is still way too much, but it's now being scored at $2.7 trillion additional debt. He has no plan to curb entitlements at all. Never talks about reforming Social Security and Medicare, only about the Republicans who are trying to do something to save it. Can you imagine how selfish it is to say, I have no plan to save Social Security and Medicare, I'm kicking it down the road, because our grandchildren will never get it if we don't do something about it, and he won't do anything about it. He took credit for saving the auto industry when GM would have been a lot better off being allowed to go through bankruptcy. Instead, his union buddies got paid off, and the actual people that invested in GM buying stock got totally ripped off. Ford, that took no bailout money, is even doing better than GM. GM still owes $30 billion in loan, which the taxpayer will never see. He spent billions of dollars paying off his cronies in green companies, which went bankrupt. And you think about his advisors, Reverend Wright, who said, "God damn America," and America's chickens have come home to roost about 9/11, and who supports Farrakhan, and had meetings with Farrakhan and Ahmadinejad and the Black Panthers in New York recently. And then you have Bill Ayers, the unrepentant terrorist bomber who Obama lied about, saying he was just a guy from the neighborhood when he had his first fundraiser in his living room. And then you have Rashid Khalidi and Edward Said, the two anti-Semitic, anti-Israel Arabs who were the direct main influences on his foreign policy view. Professor Unger of Harvard, who was so far left that when he went to Brazil to help the socialist government, they kicked him out. These were the guys who mentored. And then Frank Anthony Davis, the Communist USA Party member in Hawaii. These are the guys who mentored Obama. And how about him bowing to the king of Saudi Arabia? Well, he had the control of Congress, remember, for the first 2 years, could have had anything he wanted, did nothing about these problems. He's refused to release the following things: his Senate papers and when he was in the Senate, his transcripts at college or law school, his medical records, the Khalidi tape. Something happened at that meeting that the LA Times has a tape of him saying something about Israel in the Khalidi tape. He won't release it. The Fast and Furious documents, lots of others. He's outsourced millions of jobs to foreign countries and won't admit it. We have the first ever credit downgrade under his administration. We know he keeps blaming Bush for what happened in the economic collapse, but it was his buddies Reid, Pelosi, Barney Frank, and him too, as senator, that supported legislation that forced banks to give money to people that couldn't buy homes. And then it was fought by Bush and fought by McCain, but the Democrats overruled them. That's what caused this whole mess. We're facing looming tax increases if he gets reelected because the Bush tax cuts will expire. He said he wants a civilian army. If you don't believe me, go to YouTube and search Obama wants civilian army and see what you find there. He's appointed all these people to czar positions who are not held accountable by Congress by any ways, many of whom are extremists. And then he makes illegal recess appointments. You can make appointments without getting Senate confirmation of certain positions if the Senate's in recess, but the Senate has not been in recess, and he still makes recess appointments illegally. He's made huge changes by executive decree. For example, he said a year ago he didn't have the constitutional authority to grant amnesty to illegal aliens under 18, and then he just did it a year later. He's had one cabinet meeting and one meeting with his economic advisors all year. He's only gone to 40% of his daily briefings. In fact, he skipped the daily briefing on the day of 9/11, 2012, when our embassies were sacked. And the guy just doesn't seem to care at all. And then think about forcing Catholic churches to dispense contraception so that 41 Catholic churches, for the first time ever, are suing the President of the United States. He's abdicated his responsibility to enforce our laws by failing to enforce illegal immigration laws. He has unilaterally declared the Defense of Marriage Act passed by Congress. He just said he's not in favor of it. And you think about his financial backers, George Soros, who's destabilized so many countries, giving millions to Obama and the Democrats. Think about the offense to Britain by returning the bust of Churchill. Why did he do that? Because he doesn't believe in America. He thinks America and Britain and Israel are all colonialists, and he's anti-colonialist. The second growth of this quarter was downgraded to 1.3%. That's pathetic. We're heading clearly to another recession, and he's doing nothing to improve the economy. And think about the fewest press conferences ever in modern times, the fewest cabinet meetings. He's refused to meet with Netanyahu, saying he didn't have time, but he went on The View. Of the administration's 20 top earners, who each took home a tidy $172,000 for their work, only 6 were women. And there's a disparity of $11,000 per person between male and female staff members in his administration. So you think about all this, these scandals, and horrible economics, and betraying Israel, and appeasing Iran. He has been clearly the worst president in American history. He's a grave danger to America, and he must be defeated. It's impossible to consider why somebody in their right mind would vote for him.